My name is Jessie Ace. I'm part of a group of enabled warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. See, we push the limits. We are mentally strong, and we can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jessie Ace, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at iHerb, supplements at an affordable price. Go to mmini.me/iHerb or click the link in the show notes. Check out the supplements that I take on there too in my recommended supplements section. By clicking this link, iHerb will give back to the Disabled to Enabled podcast, and you get some awesome supplements at a great price. Enabled Warriors, welcome back to part 2 of our interview with George Pepper. We've just spoken about his diagnosis, so if you missed that, please go back and listen to it. Make sure you know the situation, what's going on. In this section, we'll have a chat about the amazing things that he's done since his diagnosis. Hi again, George, you all right?
Very good, thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about when you first decided to do something to help others after your diagnosis and set up your own charity? I mean, like, you set this up with a friend at first, didn't you? Is that right? Can you just talk us through what happened?
Yeah, so I suppose to answer the first part of your question, I think the kind of realization that there was a gap in provision for people newly diagnosed with MS came through my own experiences in the years that followed diagnosis. And I suppose on one hand, I was told by my neurologist that MS is most commonly diagnosed when you're in your 20s and 30s. But this didn't reflect my own experiences. Unfortunately, I was spending a lot of time in clinic in those first couple of years, and the people I was seeing were older than me. They had different problems to me. I went to a couple of local meetups, and I didn't mean any disrespect to the people I met there, but I quickly realised these people, they were different to me. They were different ages, and I was really looking for people in a similar situation to me. And even when going online, even though it's not immediately obvious how old people might be, or exactly what their situation is, it became clear from the kind of the tone of the conversations that these were people who had needs and challenges, but they were different to the ones I was going through. And this was a time when I was in my early to mid 20s, and I was desperately trying to figure out what this diagnosis, this pretty horrible diagnosis, might mean to me. And I wanted to find people who were, I suppose, in a way, as similar to me, in a similar situation to me, but I found that challenging. Over time, I started to find and speak to other people who, were in a similar situation, and was able to share the ideas that we began to have about creating a space for people who were kind of newly diagnosed with MS. Mm-hmm. And it became pretty clear that this was the ideas we had and the feelings we had were kind of replicated with other people as well. And going back, we're talking about 2006, 2007. Facebook was in its infancy. Twitter was just about to be launched. This was kind of very early on in the social media world. But I think we recognised that once you have an online platform, you have opportunity to connect people from all over. And once you get rid of the geographical barrier, there's real opportunity for people to meet and connect with each other no matter where they live. And that was exciting to us. I was very fortunate. You mentioned before about setting up with a friend. I was very fortunate that really close group of friends at university, which was very soon after I was diagnosed. So very soon, I can't even speak. Very soon after I left university, MS came along, and it's a very good group of friends at university who very much supported me and kind of helped shaping what shift.ms now looks like today, but also in kind of raising the funds necessary to actually get the website set up initially. And there's a kind of a whole group of what we call startup founders who are from university. But there's one particular person who's Freddie Yorner, who I actually then was co-founded the organisation with, and he still works as a member of the team today. So 10 years later. So yeah, Freddie's been kind of there from the start, which has been to have that support.
That's awesome, and it's great that the people at uni kind of gathered around you and supported you and kind of helped you with that dream as well.
Yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate. I just realised, perhaps didn't realise at the time, but I was very lucky to have such a close group who just all felt the need to, or felt they wanted to support me and recognise that there was this kind of this gap in provision, which they could help me to try and fill. And yeah, that was, in terms of supporting their friend, it's the best thing they could have done. And yeah, I feel very grateful to everyone who helped shift.ms be where it is today and get us started.
That's awesome. So when was the moment that you decided to turn it into an actual charity? And how did you do it? Because setting up a charity is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah, so being a charity per se was never the goal. The goal was there. We felt the kind of initially we felt there was this gap in support for people newly diagnosed. I felt pretty clear that if people are most commonly diagnosed in their 20s and 30s, and that existing services were meeting the needs of people outside of this age range and outside of this time in their life, then essentially there was a problem there, a problem that could be fixed. And I felt it was a very important problem to fix, because I believe very early on that being proactive in the management of your MS was key. And I felt without kind of dedicated support for people in this age range, or this, it's not really the age range, it's this time immediately after diagnosis, then people aren't going to get him, I suppose, empowered to manage their condition. And I know how isolated I felt in those years after, how desperate I felt. And if there's a way of connecting people to give them the peer support, reduce the isolation, that is such an understandable kind of effect of a diagnosis of MS, then that would be a good thing. In terms of the charity part of it, as I say, that it was never the driver to set up a charity. It was just that when we felt they had this need, and that was kind of validated by both people living with MS and also people we spoke to in terms of healthcare professionals and existing charities, then it was working out what was the best vehicle to deliver that need. And we decided that the charity would be the way we would go. And it's interesting, someone asked me recently, if you had your time again, would you still set up as a charity? And I don't know the answer to that. But what I would say is, setting up a charity is tough, as you say. There is quite a strict level of governance around setting up a charity for very good reason. But it also makes it quite awkward for a founder, because as a founder, as soon as I didn't become an employee of the charity for some time, because we didn't. It was never my intention for it to be anyone's job, let alone my job. But once we had a few thousand members and we got supported from the Wellcome Trust, and we had a need to take on employees, and I joined the charity 3 years after we founded as the second employee. And at that point, I could no longer be a trustee. And it's quite a weird thing where you're the founder, but you're essentially employing your bosses, which is just quite an interesting situation. But I suppose I'd be cautious about people setting up a charity until they realise that the work that needs to be taken to undertake this, and also if they're certain that A, it's the right model, and B, that a new entity is the most effective way of delivering their desired outcomes.
Wow. Okay. That's cool. Do you think setting up Shift MS and talking to others with kind of similar experiences helps you come to terms with your own illness? Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at iHerb, supplements at an affordable price. Go to mmini.me/iHerb or click the link in the show notes. Check out the supplements that I take on there too in my recommended supplements section. By clicking this link, iHerb will give back to the Disabled to Enabled podcast, and you get some awesome supplements at a great price.
Yeah, I mean, undeniably.
Yeah.
It may not have been as clear to me then as it is now, but both the being able to focus on, being able to have something to focus on, which in this case was the setting up and then the running of shift.ms. But then on one hand, and the other hand being having so many people to be able to reach out to and have that peer support from and with. Yeah, that was, I mean, a huge support to me. And I don't think I realised it maybe as clearly as I did a year or so later, but I'm very aware of the positive effects that the whole setup of shift.ms has had on me personally. I often talked, when again going back a few years, when I'd only been diagnosed a few years, fatigue was kind of my constant, and that really stopped me being able to kind of work full time. I mean, those early years, I'm yawning. I can't say fatigue without yawning. Apologies. But yeah, fatigue was a big issue. But I also at the same time had this kind of desire for something positive to come out of my diagnosis. And I think that's a very common response to trauma. I learned some years later, I was told some years later, that the technical term for that is not in fact MS energy, which is how I described it. So MS energy was the term I used, but the actual clinical term for it was post-traumatic growth. So people who go through a trauma often have a desire for something good to happen as a result. And make no mistake, a diagnosis of MS is a trauma. It's traumatic. It's a traumatic experience. Yeah. So how about you? I mean, I suppose you must have had the same.
Yeah, definitely.
In a way.
Definitely. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. So let's move on.
Unbelievable.
Did you work alongside any other charities at first, like before setting up MS? Before setting up shift.ms? Like what experiences did you kind of have around that? Did you know anything about starting a business or anything, or were you just completely blank slate?
Quite. I mean, for us, it wasn't, we want to start an organisation. That wasn't the starting point. The starting point was we felt there was this gap. How do we fill it? So we approached, kind of with the initial ideas for what became Shift.ms. We approached the main UK MS charities, and we got a response from the MS Trust, and in particular from a lady called Nicola Russell, who was I think she was Director of Services at the time. She's retired now. And I remember she kind of came back to, I think it was an initial email. She said, let's meet up. And so we met up with a kind of a mutual friend. And I remember just kind of doing my pitch of what we wanted to create. And she gave me a very fair response. She said, I get what you're saying. I don't know enough about the kind of digital world, but what I can do is I can put you in a room with a group of healthcare professionals, and you can hear from them about what you think is a sensible idea, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And that's exactly what she did. She arranged a meeting in London, and there was some MS nurses, specialist nurses, some neurologists, some big names in the clinical field, who we didn't really know at the time how significant that was. We had these meetings, we kind of pitched our ideas, and there was two main messages from those meetings, or two main takeaways. One was, they got it. They were like, there is a gap in provision for people newly diagnosed, and we can do more. And they felt that the more established MS charities were perhaps not the most appropriate ones to deal with that, because they have perhaps their own kind of core audience of people they're trying to meet. meet the needs of. So that was one takeaway. The second takeaway was very clear, which was don't duplicate, and that was a resounding message. There's enough duplication in the MS community already. There's enough duplication in the UK MS community already. Never mind the kind of global sphere. And don't add to that. Don't add to the duplication. Don't add to that waste of resource. And I think it was absolutely right for them to make that observation. And we've kind of remained. That's been very clear to us, and ever since then we've tried to be as clear about what we don't do as we are about what we do. And we recognise there are many areas of kind of the management of MS which we're interested in, but we know we're not the right ones to deliver. But what we are there to deliver is kind of support people through essentially the peer support of living with MS at a time that is immediately following diagnosis.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant what you've done with shift.ms. I mean, like, you've grown it so big in the last 10 years. It's just phenomenal. And going to MS sessions, I think, as well, was like a complete eye-opener for me. So warriors listening who don't know, we went to Bucharest last year, sorry. We're in 2020. We went
welcome.
I know, what?
I've got to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy February.
Happy February. Yeah.
Oh gosh. So we spent some time in Bucharest, and it was 2.5 days, I think. I can't remember now. Gosh, it was so long ago. And that was really informative, really brilliant. There was loads of talks from different people, like neurologists and Connor Curley. It's just like popped into my head. But yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think that taught me a lot about MS, and actually there's quite a lot that I didn't actually know that I thought I knew, which was very insightful. So yeah,
good.
Awesome. So I love your motto at Shift MS. It's so for people that don't know, we believe MS doesn't mean giving up on ambitions, just rethinking how to achieve them. How did you come up with that vision?
I remember the long conversations that Freddie and I had some years ago about kind of the wording of that. I suppose we felt we were always committed to at Shift MS was creating a positive, supportive community that was focused on finding a way and supporting people to find a way to achieve their ambitions, to achieve their goals, and no matter kind of what obstacles they're faced with, they are able to overcome them. And we wanted to be to really kind of communicate that we're a positive place and to create I suppose that atmosphere within the community. And we always kind of we've always put a lot of importance on our brand to reflect the motto. And we believe it. I mean, we believe that MS is a fucker. I'm sorry for my language, but it's that can't be the end point. And I just don't think there's any choice. It can't be the end point. And like individually, this is not a shift message. This is George saying this. I'm not giving myself any choice but to find a way to get past the challenge that's thrown at me, because what's the other option? We've got to go out there and smash it, because we're living now, aren't we? And there's I don't see there an alternative. And I think we felt that message and that brand and that community was needed. So I'm really glad you picked up on that motto, and it's pretty scribbled on many pieces of paper 11 years ago. So it's nice that it's picked up right now. Thank you.
That's amazing.
And actually, sorry to interrupt, but just to say that I feel I've got to practice what I preach as well, and I believe in that motto wholeheartedly. But around the time that I got diagnosed, it felt that every relapse that came along, every new symptom that came along, there were possibilities that were shutting, and it was hard for me not to think, I can't do that anymore. I'm going to find that a real struggle. I was constantly thinking about the negative impact longer term of this diagnosis, and quite a few of my friends had either just been traveling or were just about to go traveling, and I don't know how important traveling was to me before I was diagnosed. But because it suddenly felt impossible,
You
it
had
became like the most important thing in my world.
yeah.
Um, and so I think it was about 2007. I realized I want to make this happen. I mean, no idea how it would happen, and certainly no possible sense of where the money would come from. But about a year later, I started saving, and with my girlfriend at the time, we started saving, and we're very good with our standing orders. So we set up a new bank account, and we're siphoning off money every month. Not very much, but when it builds up over a 3-year period, it adds up. And in 2011, we set off around the world, and we went 6 months. We went to India, Japan, Indonesia, and 3 months in South America, and it was incredible. But there was quite a few things that were going against me at that time. One of them being I just started on a monthly infusion, a drug called Tysabri, and I remember telling my neurologist, I think I was on my second infusion, so I was 2 months in to this treatment, and I said to him, "Doctor," leave his name blank for this podcast. I was like, "Doctor, I'm going travelling," and he just kind of smiled, and I think he expected me to say I was going for a fortnight's interrailing across Europe or something, and I then said I was going for 6 months, and he kind of just suddenly stared at me, and he then asked me where I was going, and when I told him I was going to India and Bolivia and Peru and Indonesia and these places, he just was basically like, this that you can't do that on this treatment. But I was determined, because I'm that sort of annoying person, and I found a way to receive the treatment on my travels, and it was quite a lot of work to do it, but I imagined for very minimal expenditure to make that happen. And I suppose it was just a reminder that what gave me the whole experience gave me immense confidence. What it showed me was it didn't really make any sense for me to go on that trip. My parents just thought I was being ludicrous. But we can do stuff. We can just, and we might have to take a different route to get there. But why not? Let's set our sights high.
I wholeheartedly believe that. Yeah, so true. So how on earth did you make that work before we go into part 3?
In what sense?
With Tysabri and getting the infusions and things, and
so
a lot of foreign hospitals.
So you're meant to take it every month. That's the typical regime, is every 4 weeks you go in for an infusion. But I spoke to a couple of different neurologists about the plans, and then came up as an option that perhaps for limited time I could take the drug every 2 months. So I basically had it almost the day before I left, and I had it the day I got back, or the day after I got back.
Okay.
And then I had it every other month. But if over a 6-month period, that's actually only twice. So you have it the day before you go, 2 months later, 2 months later, and then once you get back. Okay. And I managed to arrange those 2 infusions, one on a stop off in Melbourne and one on a stop off in Sao Paulo. And Melbourne was quite straightforward because, well, it helps that they speak English. Yeah. And Sao Paulo is less straightforward. And especially when we've just been in Argentina for a month, and my Spanish was gone from non-existent to a base level, to then moving up to Brazil and being like, what do I do? Speak incredibly bad Spanish or speak English? Because my Portuguese was nowhere. Anyway, that was okay. And then they're very supportive, both the hospitals and the pharmaceutical company who provided it. They're very supportive in making it happen. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's really good to know, to be honest, how all that works, because I've spoken to a few people who have kind of moved abroad and things, and I'm just I think with my treatment that I'm on, so I'm on Tecfidera, I need a 3 monthly blood test and all of that sort of stuff, and it's But I've actually started learning Japanese because eventually one day I want to go and live in Japan at some point.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Konnichiwa.
Hajime mashite. So,
Hi.
yeah.
I know we went to Japan on that trip as well. It was amazing. I feel very lucky to have been to Japan. Well, we should perhaps have this conversation off recording.
That would be awesome. But now I'm like, oh crap! I've only done it for 3 weeks, so I'm not like a master or anything.
We'll put it there for 3 weeks, and I think I've got three words I can say.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yes, hello, and thank you. So, very, very useful.
Very useful. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Before we go into part 3, do you have any advice that you would like to give someone who is currently going through a diagnosis?
Yeah, I think I would say take time. It takes time. It takes time to really understand what the diagnosis might mean to you. I think it's very easy to be hard on yourself and think, yeah, I've had MS for a month and I still can't work it out. I don't mean a month's length of time. I'm talking months or even a couple of years to really figure out how this condition may sit in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one thing you really don't need is giving yourself a hard time. So I'd really give yourself a break. I'd be really cautious about making major decisions during that time. And when I say major decisions, I mean things such as making career decisions during that early first or second year, following diagnosis. And yeah, I think when the point comes that you've kind of come to terms with the condition and you've worked out how this can essentially, because what we all want to have as small a part in our life as possible, you can then start making really positive choices about the condition. And what I mean about that is making choices before you're forced into making them. So that might mean adjustments to your lifestyle, or might mean going on to a treatment, or whatever it means. But rather than waiting for MS to strike, make sure you get there first.
Yeah, definitely. That is amazing advice. Thank you so much for that, George. It's been amazing. It's been amazing to talk to you as well. Enabled Warriors, that was the end of part 2. Please join us again in part 3 to catch the final part of our interview, and catch up with George's super quick secrets. I can't wait for what you're going to say. It's just going to be amazing. Remember, if you've been affected by any issues raised in this episode, then please leave us a comment and subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss out on great stories. If you want to fight back against your invisible illness and help take the dis out of disability, then join the tribe on Facebook, facebook.com/enabled warriors. If you love this podcast, click that subscribe button and never miss another episode. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.